What is going on, fellow gamers? It's your boy Foe, and we're making walls today. We're making walls on the cheap. I'm not going to joke around. I'm not fooling around today. Let's just get right into it. Let's get right into this. Okay, we're making a bunch of walls. And guess what? You can make about 50 of these walls. Look at these things. You can make about 50 of these walls for about $1 plus paints. Okay, I'm talking about $1 for 50 walls plus paints. Let's get into this. All right, so you want to know how you're going to get these walls on the cheap. This is how you're doing it. You're going to go down to Variety Store. What I'm showing you right here is a piece of foam board. It's about 1/4 inch thick. And you're going to go in there. You're going to say, excuse me, I need help finding something. You have to show me where the foam board is. No, I'm not doing a project. I'm not doing a science project. Do I look like I am doing a science project? I have to make walls for Gaslands and other tabletop games that I play. So just show me where the foam board is, please, before I tear apart your whole entire store. Anyway, what we're going to do is you can take a sheet of this foam board. They sell for about 50 cents each. So you get them from anywhere from 50 cents to $1. So I went with $1. Okay? I got this thing for 75 cents. So I was right in between. So what you're going to do is you can take a ruler, you can take a pencil, and you're going to mark out. I did about 1 inch apart from one another, because that's going to be the height of my walls, is 1 inch. So I did 1 inch marks on one side, then I went over to the other side and I put 1 inch marks on the other side. This way we could draw a line to said marks and they will line up straight. I did about 10 to begin with, so that was about half of this board. So what I'm showing you right now, all these things I'm going to make right now is about half of a board. Okay? What I did was, I can't find my T-square. I think my sister came over. She borrowed some stuff from the garage, and I think she took my T-square. So I gotta go over to her and be like, you're my sister. I love you. But where's my T-square? Because I had to make some walls, and I couldn't make it. Okay, I had to make some walls for the games I play, and I couldn't make it because you took my T-square. But I did make it. I used the top of a puzzle box. So I got the top of a puzzle box, and it did the job. So I made my lines. It's not exactly as straight as I'd want if I had my T-square, but it was straight enough. Then I took my X-Acto knife. I put a brand new blade on this bad boy. This way it just sliced through the poster board like a warm knife through butter. I'm doing it on a glass table. This way I don't gotta really worry about the blade going through the poster board and messing up the table underneath. Because glass really doesn't, you have to really work hard to scratch that table that I have. And you're gonna do even lines. I have a pretty steady hand, so I could follow, but if you don't have a super steady hand, take a ruler or a straight edge, line it up, and then use that to make the cuts. Now what you're gonna do is, you could get a little bit rough where the edge isn't perfectly straight, because you're gonna be cutting these things up anyway to look like they've been taking some like hits from like machine gun fire and like real damage. But you want to keep the blade straight up and down. My son came over, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna grab one of these war portions and I'm gonna show you what to do with this thing. And he just starts tapping it all over the place. But he's just excited because he wants to get these walls onto the Gaslands track as much as I do. So he was super pumped about it. Then what you're going to do is, after you got a bunch of the strips ready to go, you're going to do, I think I did them 4 inches long. So 1 inch high and then 4 inches long. And then you're going to mark one of them up. I was like, I just had enough. I grabbed the wall piece. I was like, enough. Enough with the tapping. I'm trying to make walls for Gaslands. Stop. Well, anyway, then you're going to mark your walls 4 inches apart. You use one as a guide, and then the rest of them you just use off of the one you marked up. Then you're going to cut them up into 4 inch long segments. which is pretty easy to do. I mean, it's self-explanatory after this, but I mean, this is super easy stuff. So you cut it up, mark a few more, move on to the next one. And just keep on going along like so until you have the amount of walls that you're going to want. I did a whole bunch. I actually cut like probably about 30 or 40 walls right here. So look at that. I got a giant stack of walls. It's ridiculous. Look at all these things. I'm throwing them up. I'm having a party. And I'm having a wall party. Because I'm going to need a lot of walls for what I want to do. I have a couple of ideas. I want to get a bunch of walls out there. And I also want to take some walls and bring them to the club and donate some terrain to the club as well. Now you got to come up with a way to stand these things up. They're not going to stand up by themselves. Okay? Oh, and what I was saying before is you want to make sure when you're cutting out the walls, I mean, it could be a little bit uneven if you're going like, you know, along the edges because you're going to cut them up and make them look battle damage like I was saying. But you want to make sure the blade is straight up and down. This way, it's a flat surface. So when you make your stand, they could stand up on the stand. What I was doing with those triangle wedges, I was going to make those as my stands, but then I found an easier way. Like, why am I going to struggle with these triangle wedges? I have a whole ton of walls to make. I'm going to be banging out like 100 walls today. I don't need to be messing with anything unnecessary. So I just took some simple, straight lines and I cut them up. I just took one of the wall segments, I cut it up into thin strips, glued them to the bottom of the wall, and it worked perfect as a stand for the wall. And it's super easy. Look how easy this is. This is mega easy. And look, there you go. You got a wall right there. Boom, done. Wall. Next. So I banged out a bunch of walls, obviously. So I glued a bunch of legs onto them. You could rearrange these things however you want to. They line up next to each other just fine. So you could make them, you could make a track. You could use them on the outside edge of your track. You could do little sections in the middle of your track. Whatever you want to do. You have a bunch of these walls now. They were super cheap. It's like $1 for a piece of foam board. Anything beyond like on paints and glue, you should already have this stuff. I mean, we've been playing games for a long time, folks. You should have these things. I don't know what I made there. That kind of looks like some boobs or a butt. I don't even know what I was doing there. I'm just trying to show you. You could line these things up however you want. Okay, so now I'm trying to make some kind of weird track. I don't even know what I'm doing with these walls. The Gorilla Glue is starting to get to my head a little bit. That was the problem. And I like using Gorilla Glue because it dries faster. You could use white glue for this. That's perfectly fine. Or wood glue. Wood glue works a little bit better in my opinion. Then you take your X-Acto knife. You take your hobby knife. And you're just going to start cutting into this thing and making it look like it's been taking some battle damage, whether it's from weapons fire or cars smashing into this thing, taking chunks of concrete off the wall. Whatever you want to do, just do whatever, man. There's no guideline to battle damage, dude. Just whatever you want to do. And I said dude. And when I say dude, I mean male and female. I call women dude. I call my friends dude. So when I just called you guys dude, it's a compliment. You're my friends. So anyway, getting back to these walls. Like right here, I just gouged in and I made a little indentation. I didn't go all the way through the wall because it's also cool because not all shots are going to cut through a concrete wall, folks. Machine gun fire doesn't just cut through a concrete wall in one shot. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your blade, you're going to dig into the first layer, give it a little twist, and then pull out a little bit of foam. And then if you want to make it look like a couple of shots in a row, you just take that X-Acto knife, you stick it in there, you give it a couple of twists, and there you go. You got bullet holes. You got bullet holes. You're ready to rock. Take a couple of pieces off, make this thing look like it's worn, like it's been out there for a while, taking some damage, and there you go. You'll get a hang of it. After you cut up, you're gonna be doing like 100 of these things. So after you cut up a couple of them, you get a rhythm going. And there you go. Like I just clicked over, I cut all these walls up. I did all different patterns. I cut some off the corners. I cut some stuff off on the bottom of the walls. I put some holes through them to make them look like, maybe a cannon fire just busted a hole right in a wall. Who knows? These things are under a lot of fire, a lot of stress. So they're going to be taking a ton of damage. So make sure you take your X-Acto knife. Don't be shy. Just get in there and start cutting away at these things. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. Just get in there and do it. Get these walls done. Then what I did was I went and I grabbed a car because I wanted to just show the scale of the cars next to a wall. So I'm just showing off the scale. I dig the way these came out, and what I like about doing projects like this is it's nice to see what you could do with just a buck. Man, not even a buck. This piece of foam board was 75 cents. I talk to a lot of people and they're afraid of making terrain because they look at a table, and when you look at a nice table, you're like, man, that's gonna be super expensive. I just spent all this money on other things. It doesn't have to be expensive. Super nice tables, don't get me wrong. You're going to spend a little bit of money. But you could also build a table with like a $25 budget. It's super easy. You just got to get in there and do it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to paint these bad boys. What I did was I primed them black. Then I gave them a base coat of gray, which was basically just my black with a little bit of light gray mixed into the paint. And then I went in there and I took the light gray and I'm lightening up the black as I go. So dip in the dry brush. This is an old brush. This is an old Citadel small flat dry brush that I'm using here. I've had this brush for a very long time. I use it to make terrain and things like that. So I usually dry brush terrain and vehicles with this brush. It's a little big for figures, but it also works well on cars too. It's just a wide brush to work on miniatures, but it's really good for terrain and larger vehicles. So you're just going to go in there and you're just going to keep on taking some light gray, and you're just going to keep on lightening up that mixture with every layer of dry brushing that you do. So you make sure you hit all the edges, but start to think where your light source is coming from. So I'm doing my light source is basically coming from like the top of the wall. So what I'm doing is I'm hitting the dry brush and I'm coming down kind of on like an angle, because I think it makes it look it makes the texture look a little bit more natural. That's the word I was looking for. Then you're going to go back in there, add a little bit more of the light gray paint, and just keep on making that highlight lighter and lighter until you get to a point where you're happy with the highlights. Now, I also like to highlight a little more than I have to, because I like to then bring my highlights back down with a wash, which lets it all blend together pretty good. I'm just kicking on a couple of the final highlights in the bottom of this piece, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the other wall I have there. I've been really wanting to get a lot of terrain on the table for Gaslands, so I'm really happy I decided, you know what, let me make a bunch of barricades, a bunch of walls. And what's cool about these barricades, they could actually work for other games like 40K, Infinity, and all that jazz. Because when you're working with walls of barricades, the scale isn't that big of an issue, because it works for Hot Wheels, because the barricades are meant to like block cars and vehicles. So the walls are kind of going to be a little bit larger than like a normal barricade. And for 40K, it works great because these could be barricades where dudes could be standing behind them, shooting at the other side or whatever. And these walls just work great for both 40K and for Gaslands. fits in fine and looks great. So what I did was I just continued hitting this thing off with the dry brush. Took a little bit more light gray paint, mixed it in with the black, because you want to get a lighter step every time you take the dry brush to this thing. This way you get a couple of highlights going. And you see I'm following that same angle that I did with the last pass. This way I'm pulling it down and I'm giving it kind of like a texture as I'm giving it a highlight as well, because these, this poster board is kind of flat. The foam on the inside, on the edges, that looks great because that's all cut up. But the flat sides are pretty just flat and smooth, and you want to try and make these things look like concrete. Now, you can take a textured paint. You could make your life a little bit easier if you feel like you don't want to texture it yourself like I'm doing here. You could just get yourself some like textured paint or a little bit of sand, and you could spray it with some glue, put a little bit of white glue, paint it on, and then take some sand, throw it on there, take some textured paint, paint it on, and you can make it look like concrete that way. Or you could do it what I'm doing and just dry brush striations into the side, which gives it the appearance of a texture. And that's one less thing you have to do. You don't got to go and get textured paint or paint this thing in white glue to put sand on it. I just find it's easier just to add texture with the paintbrush at times. And this was one of those times. So I'm taking some more of the gray, and now I'm hitting off the bottom edges. Now, mind you, my light source is coming from the top, but for things like this, I like to just highlight the edges a little bit as well, going all the way around. And when we go back in there with the wash, I'll darken those up a little bit, but they'll still have a highlight. This way it shows the edge. And again, I'm just making those striations, going up and down, up and down. I think you guys get the point. I think you guys get the picture since I'm showing it to you on video. Now what I did was I did the same thing with the second wall. So there's no need to watch me do a whole nother wall. So we're going to take some washes, and this is Camo Shade. You really can't see the lettering that well here, but this is Camo Shade by Games Workshop, Citadel Paints. Then we took some Reichland Flesh Shade and the Brown Earth Shade. So you got a brown wash, a reddish brown wash, and a green wash. And we're going to go in there and we're going to give these walls some shading and washes to tie it all together and to make it look gritty and to get these walls to really pop. So first we're going to take the Camo Shade, which is green. It's like a foliage green color wash. And we're going to go into the recesses and we're going to start laying down some shades. And we're going to hit the bottom of this thing, because remember, the light sources come from the top. And what I do is I run a wash along the bottom, get it in the cracks, and it's already starting to look pretty good. And I like to use green for things like this because it looks a little bit dirty, it looks a little bit grimy, dingy, stuff like that, and it looks good on concrete. So then I take my finger and I rub away the straight edge and I kind of make it look feathered. I kind of feather the edges so it blends in and it looks natural. So I just lay the inks on, and then again with my finger I just wipe away some of it just to blend it in. So I come across the bottom, saying, look, take my finger, bing, bam, boom, and it's like blended in. Then I come up and down, I change the angle a little bit, and I take the finger and I just wipe away those edges so you don't see a hard edge, and it kind of blends into the piece. Then I come along the bottom, get into those cracks, get into those recesses, because the camel green is kind of going to be like the shade. It's going to be in the corner. It's going to be that shadow that's in the corners, in the recesses. Then I do the same thing with wall number 2. Take the green, paint along the bottom, and then I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna take my finger and rub away the hard edge, just to blend it in all in there really, really good, really well. And then I'm just gonna keep on putting the green on the bottom, making it look dark, making it look dingy. I have to tell you, like, some of my favorite washes come from Citadel, comes from Games Workshop. I love their washes. The current washes they have, when they came out with these washes, it was fantastic. I mean, I love these washes. I don't know, I can't talk for everybody, but I know for me, and I tried a couple of other washes. I tried Vallejo washes. I love Vallejo paint. If you look at my painting station, I have tons of Vallejo paint. I love their paint. I'm not crazy about their washes. Games Workshop, I like their paint, but I also love their washes. So here I took the Reikland Flesh Shade, which is like a reddish brown, and I'm gonna hit, and that's gonna be like my middle layer of my shading, and it adds another, little bit of texture, because when you do the color changes, it adds texture to the overall look also. So I take this reddish brown and I wash over the whole wall, and it kind of blends all of the striations that I was doing before, and it just blends it all in. It takes away a lot of the hard edges and just makes it look natural. And I just continue to do that with this Reiklander Flesh Shade, and I think it looks great. But getting back into talking about washes and stuff, I really love Games Workshop washes. I've always did, and I really miss their foundation paints. I know that you could still get foundation paints. They call it something else now, but I think those are fantastic too. Now, I also tried some Secret, I think they're called Secret Weapon. I tried some of their washes. They're really known for their weathering powders, but they just came out with a bunch of washes, and I wanted to try those. They didn't just come out with it. They've been out for a while, but I got my hands on some. And again, to be honest, I like Games Workshop washes. And you could make your own wash. It's not that hard to do. I just like buying the washes already made because it just makes my life a little bit easier. And the Games Workshop washes, in my opinion, are really good. These larger bottles, they're kind of pricey. I think they're like $9 a pop or $12, but they last a really long time. Like those smaller bottles that they used to have for the washes, I've had those for a pretty long time, and I use them because I really like them. So the washes do last. What I'm doing is I'm taking the brown wash now, and I'm going in there and I'm hitting the top, I'm hitting the bottoms, and I'm kind of putting that wash in the foam area because that's going to be like dark and dingy and dirty in those recesses. So I'm taking the brown now, the earth shade, and I'm doing the bottoms and just adding a little bit more shading with that. And I like to, add different tones of color in my shades when it comes to things like this because I think it gives it a more natural look, and I really dig doing that. What's nice about working with the washes, and why I use my finger to do a lot of my mixing and I'm blending on there, because washes, they don't dry right away, so you could take your finger, you get in there, and you could blend the two colors together by just wiping some of it away, and it turns out really good. And then again, I just take this brown, make sure I get it in those recesses, get it in those cracks, get it in those crevices, those nooks and crannies. Man, I go for a good English muffin right now. Get an English muffin, you get a sunny side up egg, a little bit of bacon, a little bit of hash browns, and you put it on there, you let the yolk mix that all together on that English muffin. It's so good. It's so good. I apologize if I'm making you guys hungry with my description of an English muffin with eggs, bacon, and hash browns. But I'm starting to get a little hungry now, if you could tell. But there you go. So the wall is basically coming out just how I pictured the walls coming out in my head. I want to get in there and just weather them up and make them look really grimy. Only thing missing is maybe jumping online and printing out some spray paint stickers, decals, get some decals, get some grimy graffiti work going, get some propaganda, get some spray paint looking stuff, cut the decals out, put those up on the wall, and it'll look perfect. And there you have it, guys. I hope you had a good time watching the video. I had a good time making these walls. And you get a whole bunch of walls for under $1. You can't go wrong. I got a lot more work to do. Look at all these things. It's crazy. 50 walls for under $1. Get out there and do it. Fantastic.